All right, so welcome back into another Dragon Ball Supercard game video. I know this video is a little late, but originally I wanted to post a video on Friday when the newest ban list came out about my thoughts on an upcoming ban list, ironically. So I scrapped that idea, and this is pretty much the only time I can make videos. So if anything, I wanted to quickly go over the ban list, my impressions, my quick thoughts, and as well as the colors, or at least the cards slash kind of leaders that we might see in results of this in the future. And of course, subscribe if you are new. We are almost to 5,500. I was supposed to give a box out on the 31st, so hopefully we can get to that point. But I appreciate everybody who's been subscribing and as well as been supporting. And please let me know in the comments below, what do you plan to play because of this ban list? Does this actually open up more decks for you? Does this close out to some of the more generic things or degenerate things that you're playing? Shout out to Steven from my locals for killing me turn 2. This is actually karma. All right, so I'm sure at this point you've seen the ban list already. You've seen the thoughts from Bandai and the reasoning for it. But I'm basically happy and pretty satisfied compared to the last ban list, since I think everything here that we see should have been on the original ban list. I've said it before, where it's pretty much like the first ban list was not very satisfying. It didn't hit everything that we needed to hit, and it didn't really put everything down a power level, and that kind of resulted in King Vegeta and Dark Broly and all these other aggro decks slash breaking interaction slash free play type of things that we should not have in the first place. And most of the things here I do agree with. There's a couple of things that I'm like, but I'm happy that where we have free to play things like the new ruler, and I've talked about this before in my Zeno snap list, where everybody sort of just kind of hated it for some reason. A lot of people hated it, but I was like, you know, this is not a real list, but this is something that I think that Bandai would take, and they did. This is exactly what I was talking about, and of course among other things. But I mean, this is where like I think this is a post that I posted where replay is very contextual, right? Where you get rewarded for playing a 2-cost unison, drawing off of it like King Piccolo, and then having it on board where the opponent has to deal with 3 different markers, and then you get to awaken something like starter deck Vegeta, having 2 open energy to have other threats to attack with your leader, or with your energy, I should say, and then play the new ruler where they can't block, and you're rewarded again for just having the card in your hand, just having a 20k double strike. That is something I just did not like, and I think 1 per deck is exactly where it should be. And then going over to Belmont, just like I was saying, like, just be rewarded just for having it in your hand. It's just not something that I agree with. You've seen it where Dark Broly plays out 3 different Dark Brolys. They swing 30k every single time. Or they have like 2 Dark Brolys and then a Super Saiyan 3 Gogeta. You pay nothing for the Brolys. You pay 1 for the Super Saiyan 3 Gogeta. You go into Belmont right after you swing with them, and then you play another Dark Broly because you have 3 additional black cards in your drop. And then afterwards, you can use your leader effect or something else, like the Gravy that puts warp into the drop, and then you overwhelm, and then you play another Super Saiyan 3 Gogeta, and then you play another Belmont. So stuff like that is where I feel like the design of different cards should be restricted a little bit more and just fine-tune just a little bit more going into these next sets. And I think that's where people are not very satisfied in comparing to previous archetypes like Dark Broly and things like that, because they are starting to do that. These new decks like set 14 and the special anniversary set and the support for it, and most likely set 15, that's weird to say, are most likely gonna see the same treatment, so we can kind of prevent this stuff from happening. People need to know that there's a balance in between putting out different cards and as well as making it interesting and unique and strong. That's just how I feel about these type of cards. Same thing with Tau, where it kind of extends different red decks and as well as decks that play a lot of cards. Again, red decks with the product of Resolute, and as well as just how you can get that extra attack and just re-swing after they negate. I don't really like the Power of Legend. That's just because I like hand destruction. That's just me. Really strong card in Cell Surge and really strong card in a lot of different decks, but it will definitely adapt from there. And also, by the way, this is also a Son Goku Xeno target. So like if you put it in another 15k big boy or 15k Vegeta boy, I should say, and you now have a Super Saiyan 3 Gogeta target or whatever engine that you want to put in there, Pretora that is. And then Mega Frieza finally gets a ban, along with the U9 Assemble being unbanned. I'm happy about these two. Not much to say about it because it's been said so many times. Bewitching Blow is a bewitching blow to my heart because I really like the engine for this, and I did turn to a couple people with Reboot Mass Saiyan. It was a Janemba like base sort of skillless deck that I was playing with Reboot Mass Saiyan, and basically you just use this with Bean, and then you can use the engine if you want to, which is kind of clunky in the first place. But just because of this card, it is sort of free play on turn 3. I didn't really agree with it because you have to have so much on the field where you don't have to have that much on the field with the New Ruler. It's super easy to get New Ruler out, not that much to have a skillless on the board that they don't have to, well, they can easily respond to, I should say, and then have 3 energy, and then make sure it doesn't get killed in the activate battle, or combo step, I should say. And then finally, you have to have energy to pay your Dark Broly's. Thank you to actually do that. Super happy to see that. The 2 planet Vampas, or the 2 planets, I should say, now require you to have no battle cards on the field, which is nice because both of these decks basically will have battle cards on the field every single time. I think the other part of it is that this is a good errata for the fact that it's not broken in the way that if you don't have anything on the field, you have to sort of plan out your attacks or the type of cards that you do want to play on the field, get rid of them, or have the opponent get rid of them. And this is sort of the last ditch effort. I don't see Red Broly players playing Planet Vampa anymore. I do see obviously Planet Tuffle being played. And then Young Invaders is definitely a dent into King Vegeta players. It sucks that you have to pay energy for it now in order to get out a Young Invader. But I mean, like, you have to realize that you're still creating something every single turn for free, and the opponent has to combo it off in order to effectively get rid of it. So I mean, I think it's still pretty strong, and it balances it out pretty well, and it slows down the deck quite a lot. Switching gears is probably still the optimal play for it. And then, by the way, one costs 30k big beaters that do stuff. Like, that's still really strong. Easily still tier 1. Okay, now before I go into all the colors and the decks that I kind of want to talk about that we'll probably see in the future for this format, I want to talk about one problem. I just don't understand why they still have a first turn kill in the game and they didn't address it. I honestly don't understand who's on the design team for Bandai, but honestly, they probably just need to just get rid of the whole team and just hire a new one at this point. I mean, just look at this. This is just absolutely ridiculous. It's just literally 1 energy that you have to pay for, and then they take all of their life. I don't understand. I'm a little lost for words, man. It's fine. I'm sure they'll put that on the ban list sometime or another. But let's just get into blue. Here's the thing. I don't really want to talk about the leaders. I will talk about some leaders, but the basic gist of this and what you should understand and what you should understand going to this future format is the fact that we're going to be taking a look at different cards that are going to be the focus of certain decks. I think that's kind of where we're leaning in towards for the future format, at least just for how the game is designed. And it's sort of been like that for a good amount of sets where, yes, the leader is super strong like King Vegeta or Dark Broly or whatever, but it's because we're playing certain cards that enable it for the deck engine and the deck itself. So, I mean, when it comes to blue, obviously God Sealing is still godly. I mean, it stops so many different things. It stops so many different things in black. I think blue is sort of the counter for black, if anything. Majin Buu gives you a 20k double striker and a blocker, and as well as removal, all within 1 turn. Stuff like Super Saiyan 3 and Vegeta Ramp can play at turn 3. Soul Striker has no issue playing this turn 4 if they're awakening turn 3 anyway. So, I mean, you get the value out of whatever unison you have, and then you play this late game. And then, of course, the counter Golden Avenger is still one of the strongest cards in the game. I honestly think this is super busted for what it is. And I think if you do get to turn 5, or if you're using the 3 cost baby unison with the Hachiyak, you're going to get that pretty much guaranteed, and it seals the game pretty easily. And then obviously Sensu Bean, I mean, it's just Sensu Bean. It gives you defense. It extends turns. It is dodge every single ban list, and I don't think it's ever going to be on a ban list. Galactic Buster is a free card, so again, one of those things that we have to take a look at, where we're drawing a card and then comboing something, and then we're getting rewarded for having open energy, which blue usually does. And then Calamity, where we have a 1 cost new ruler which stays on the field, and you can play it after turn 3 basically. because most of the blue unisons, I think there are a couple, like the I think the one that came out set 14 that you can play with 15k more, but you still have to wait until 3 energy, so it's whatever. Now we're talking about decks. Obviously Soul Striker is on everybody's mind. I don't really disagree with this. I talked about in my follow-up video for the ban list that I was saying that Soul Striker is probably the next thing that people are going to complain on, or at least jump on. And honestly, nothing in blue for this ban list and the last one was really touched. So obviously people are going to be leaning towards blue, and Soul Striker is going to be that first generic leader in which people are going to kind of take a look at. It's super strong. It draws a lot of cards and it untaps energy. What more do you want, really? On the other end, where we have 3 open energy every single turn for Super Saiyan 3, where we can play all of the floodgates, we can play Galactic Buster, we can do a lot of different things for Super Saiyan 3, and it's been basically just popping in and out of people's topping lists, and as well as just people's minds in the first place anyway. And then Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, I think it's still very strong. It has this weird like mid-game aggression type of thing going on. It awakens early, it can do a lot of cool things, and it has a really cool finisher. All 3 of these decks are pretty strong. Don't really see any of them not doing work in the future format. We have yellow, and I think yellow, because of Mecha Frieza being banned, like when you really look at everybody or everything in yellow, it sort of feels weird to kind of play. I think it's like this not so much grindy, but like you do different things, but it doesn't really have a good output later on. So it's like you're grinding, but grinding to what? And I think Return of the Dragon Fist sort of answers that. Being at 4 more energy and paying 3 is kind of whack with the Spirit Boost 2, but you get rewarded in not being able to super combo, not being able to gate with battle card negates, having a deflect double striker that swings twice and basically KOs 2. I mean, everything, it does everything basically, but I know a lot of people don't like this card. I don't see why, but I think when you're playing yellow, this is something that you have to consider. Power of the Super Saiyan still draws you a card, still negates, it's still very strong. Final Flash is still very strong. It's this weird removal that you might have. Bojack and as well as Zamasu are hand in hand in tandem. I'm not going to talk about multicolors very much or at all really later in the video, but I mean, you're going to see these 2 cards when you're going against yellow majority of the time. And not pictured is the 2-cost Zamasu Champ Pack card, which again, you're going to be seeing these 2 cards. They're going to be played pretty much in tandem with each other because they are so strong. You untap, you draw, you get to tap down different things. And now the new Chilai super combo is sort of similar, but for grid green. What am I saying? Green yellow. And then we have Robotic Riposte. You kind of already know what I think about this card. It's just super strong. It's a 1-cost 15k, and you get to stop their turn sometime. And we're talking about leaders. Sin is probably the first thing I would think of. I think people need to give Sin a chance. Yes, it's not aggro. Yes, it's a little bit slower, but now you have the 9-drop. Now you have Goku. Now you have all these other things as far as the tools that you can use, and now you still have like these barrier blockers and the blocker revenge 30k. So I don't see anything wrong with Sin, especially since the format should be slowing down just a tad with some of these problem aggro cards being put out. Then we have Higher Dragon with the blue yellow variant, most likely. Mono yellow is not that great with this, I think, but it draws a lot of cards and you can put out quite a lot of threats and for pretty cheap or on their turn, like the Bardock. And then hopefully with the new anniversary box sets, the support, people will kind of explore with green yellow Broly a little bit more. I think he is still a pretty viable leader, even though you can only untap some of your Broly cards. And finally black, where we have the Demigra reprint, so it's now even more accessible. So if you're playing mono black, you're probably playing Demigra, and it's going to be a little bit more cheap, or cheaper, I should say, in order to play. And then these like 3 cards, I would say, plus the Vegeta, obviously, it's going to be the engine that people should be playing in black if you can, if you're going to be playing things that go into your drop or into your warp on a frequent basis, obviously like Gogeta Zeno and the leaders I'll be talking about. But this right here, as long as you're not going against blue, again, is going to be the thing where I think black sort of beats everything that isn't blue on a 50 or 60-40 basis, and it might struggle just a little bit against green just because of the Frieza counterplay, but that's sort of the very tunnel vision type thing to think of. Then we have burst decks where The Vegex stuff is still completely free as long as you have RNG on your side. So, I mean, that's not really being addressed, or it hasn't been addressed, and I don't think they will because of RNG. And then the Oceanus with Hatchiyak. I don't think people are going to be playing Hatchiyak as much because of the aggro decks being taken care of. But I think this 2-cost blocker that makes them mill out is going to be a really good option for really any deck that wants to play it. I've even seen Soul Striker builds play this. And then finally Black, where we have leaders of like Dark Broly, I feel like is still super strong. It's going to be, I wouldn't say less consistent, but definitely a little slower, a little bit more skill intensive, and a little bit more energy heavy because of the Dark Broly. So like if you get answered for 1 energy, it's not that big of a deal, I feel like, but it's definitely not going to be as fast. It's definitely not going to be as consistently winning as we've seen before. And the Gogeta hopefully is going to be the next thing that people will lean towards because of the Super Saiyan 3 options that we have. We have so many Gogetas now, and hopefully this will be the leader that people look at. I think Vegex still is kind of capable, but I think it's sort of like the thing of like, okay, who cares about not milling out? I want to end the turn like turn 3 or 4 anyway, so why not just play Reboot Mass Saiyan? But I feel like if I put out Reboot Mass Saiyan, people are gonna, you know, not be happy about that. But I think it has potential. I think both of these have potential. I would just lean towards Reboot Mass Saiyan because both of them kind of do the same thing. You just get crit, and as well as all the rainbow effects for Reboot Mass Saiyan. I think really any burst deck for Black, if you just took this out and then just had these 3, it'll still kind of be the same. But this represents any of the burst 3 decks. And then Super Saiyan 4 Bardock. So this is sort of something where I've been testing for the last week and a half or 2 weeks or so since it's been released. And I think this deck is sort of like AOD, but evolved into a form where it does everything for you. It has like every answer that you could think of, but the first couple turns are kind of ass, and it really takes a decent player and a player that understands different interactions and different planning to really harness whatever the deck is trying to do. And I think as you play this deck and as you build it, you kind of become a better player. You're like you become better than what you played the last time you played the deck, if that makes sense. I'm very hopeful for the deck, and hopefully I can do a video on it soon. So green obviously is focusing on that charismatic villain, no reprint, hashtag no reprint. And Dormant is not going to be as strong, or at least important, because of the lack of aggro decks or the lack of options for aggro decks now. But it is what it is. 5-drop Zamasu is still super expensive for a good reason, simply because that you can just have this on the field, and anything that's not red, you just have to deal with it. So that's just awesome. And speaking of hand destruction, Ribrianne, I think recently just now got a buyout because of the potential of blue coming out and going into the format again, where hand destruction should do some work against blue. And then of course anything that plays the blue topo, it makes sense. Now when we talk about leaders, I think Vanel does have some capability to do some work. I think it's gonna take some time for people to find the right build for her, but overall it does a lot. I just realized there's 2 King Coles. That's how strong he is, but I fixed it. But I still am on the opinion where Majin Buu does have a lot of capabilities to become the next green aggro deck, and I don't think it's like super aggro. It just has a lot of 15k attackers that the opponent has to deal with. And again, anything that's not red, which I think effectively anything that's red beats anything that's green, if we're talking about what color beats what. I think definitely red gives Majin Buu the worst trouble, if anything. But overall, I think after testing Majin Buu and after doing the video, if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. I think this is a great deck. King Cold, I don't have too much experience with King Gold, but every single time I play against it, it just seems like it runs out of gas later on. But I think it is a super solid deck, and I think it does a lot. It has a lot going for it. And then Gotenks hopefully will come back into the format, because I think the only thing that really hurts it is stuff that warps it. And I think it has a couple more things like Blue Topo and a couple other things that you could implement it with, like hand destruction, and still have a big hand and still have these 25k beaters, and just overall a good solid generic deck. It's just sort of boring. And Majin Vegeta hopefully again is one of those things where if you're an aggro player, Majin Vegeta might be the next thing that you might look into. I think this as itself, even with the errata, is a little bit linear when it comes down to this deck, but I think you can build it into a couple different ways. Plus it has a little bit of more support as well. where you can kind of top with it. And then lastly, red. Yamcha kills anything that's free play. Imposing Presence is super annoying to deal with, and it just helps out a lot of things in red. The red-green Piccolo is just amazing for really anything, but it's easily answerable, especially if you're going against red-blue, or if you're going against anything that has a decent counterplay, which is why it didn't get hit on the ban list, if anything. But if you are playing red, you're most likely going to lean towards red-green, and it's not going to be surprising if this card is in it. And then hopefully we'll see Super Saiyan Bardock with the Bardock's crew in other red decks outside of Bardock's crew. But that is just me. Piccolo did not get hit, so it's going to be played in any deck that focuses on unisons, and just in general, that's just going to be the go-to unison. Divine Presence is a decent card. I talked about it before. As long as it's on your turn, it's a really good card. And then Ultimate Essence is a decent engine type of thing for U7 and its skillless cards that will draw you cards as well as make it a little bit more consistent. So these cards, I feel like, if you're playing red now, are going to be the cards that you kind of lead on. There's probably some that I'm missing. You can tell me in the comments below. And then lastly, the leaders. So launch, if you ever played against a decent launch player, it is incredibly annoying. And I think she is really good into drawing cards and defending herself, and then just playing different things within the combo step. I think that's where she sort of falls short just a little bit, but that's just me. King Piccolo, even with Drum at 1, and as well as New Ruler at 1, is still really annoying to deal with. There's still a lot of different threats that it has, from Tambourine to all the other things that plays for free, and free play is the name of the game still. So I mean, I think this is still a pretty damn good deck. The generic Super Saiyan blue Vegeta out of the starter deck is pretty solid. I think with the Piccolo Unison, with red green, with a number of other different things, you can go a lot of different routes for this. I don't think anybody has figured out the best deck for this, but I do think it's gonna top whenever we have decent events again. Jiren is my pick for red, but that's only because I'm a little biased. I literally named my video the best deck out of set 14, and that was Jiren. Play stuff for free, even though you're playing markers, and it plays stuff on the opponent's turn. It is answerable in a certain way, but it is what it is, and dealing with that that two cost Jiren that is a 35k restander on turn 3 is really hard to deal with. So I think this is something that people will look into. And then King Vegeta, you're critting a life on their turn every single turn, and you're playing red. Like, I feel like you can defend yourself and make sure to take advantage of that pretty much at any point. So I think hopefully people will not lean away from King Vegeta because of the erratas, but I still think it's decent. Ooh, look at that. I'm gone now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I know that was a little bit of a discussion, but I really don't talk about the format too much. I kind of do my own thing and post decks whenever I want to. So hopefully this will kind of explain all my thoughts and what I think. I definitely want to hear from you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.